Okay. Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. I appreciate your time and dedication into wanting to learn something new. Today, we are going to be talking about peer pressure and dating, but I sort of want to preface with saying more specifically, it'll obviously be about Generation Z and their version of healthy relationships. And the reason why I'm doing this is actually, I don't think February should get all the fun because August is actually Romance Awareness Month. And the month in itself is meant to be a month where people are much more intentional with the way that they interact with their loved ones. Obviously, it's a romantic love, so it could be much more geared towards relationships. But I also think that love in many forms can exist. And so, if we are intentional with the way that we interact with our loved ones, I think the world would be a better off place. So, here we are today learning something new, and I'm excited to get started. I always start my presentations with who am I because I want you all to know exactly where I'm coming from when I'm talking about these things, because I don't want anyone to think that one, I may be unqualified, or two, I may not be knowing exactly where I'm coming from, or you may not be knowing exactly where I'm coming from. So hello, everyone. In case you don't know who I am, my name is Ruth Del Pino. I'm a prevention educator for the Mercer Council on Alcoholism and Drug Addiction. I'm the Mercer County Grant Program Coordinator. I have a Bachelor of Arts in Global Studies, Political Science, and American Studies. I'm certified in teaching English as a foreign language, life skills training, and leadership. So that is my background, and that sort of informs how I piece a lot of my presentations together. So why this presentation? And I think that I always want to start with this because a lot of the time people come in and there may be interesting facts or things that are coming out that may scare you, or maybe something that may have people feel helpless or hopeless. But this is not to scare you. This is to inform you. This is not a parenting class. You are the best parent for your child. You know them the best. And my perspective is shaped by my approach and by my learning experiences. So this is evidence informed and some evidence-based. And what I mean by evidence-informed is that a lot of the time I look at trends, information, and things that are empirically founded in some way or another, and then I put that into the presentation. And evidence-based meaning that a lot of the programs that we do at the Mercer Council will be informing my presentation, such as Life Skills Too Good for Drugs and Footprints and Parents Who Host, which is the best way to do this. Also, I want to say that this is not a parenting class. And what I mean by that is this is for anyone who works with youth. And this is for anyone that interacts with youth on any capacity, on any basis, at any time. So really, this is meant for a lot of different people. And if you have grandchildren, if you have nieces, nephews, if you have younger brothers, younger sisters, if you want to know something more, if you're just curious, I think this is a good place to start. I also want to do just some disclaimers because I think that this presentation has the potential to not necessarily trigger people, but let people know about some forms of the brief mentions of violence that are going to be happening. I am not someone who claims to be an expert on any subject, on any of the subject matter, but what I do want to say is that this is based on the research I've done. It is variable research. It is empirically based. So I just want people to know that. This is a respectful discussion on the trends we are seeing as of late, meaning that anything that is put on this is something that is up to date, it's relevant, it's something that's in the sphere of what we're talking about. It's in the dogma of a lot of the things that we are discussing. And also realize that not all of Gen Z is like this. I don't think that we can assume the realities of every person who is in the Gen Z generation in our lives. And I think that what we should do is take a step back and sort of understand it as the trends move forward, and then see how our youth in general interact with that trend or interact with that preface. And then we're going to sort of move on from there. But this is sort of what I wanted to say before we started. I'm going to be starting my presentation with a video because I think that this is interesting for us to talk about, but more so for us to understand where Gen Z is coming from. So how do they feel about dating, just as relationships are? And when we're sort of looking at this, what we need to understand too is that healthy relationships and the way teenagers think about relationships obviously can be different. But this is actually from a nonprofit group that helps a lot of leadership qualities in their youth. I think it's a great YouTube resource. So I'm just going to play it now. And And here we go. So this is a video on what teens think about relationships.
Y'all ready for this?
People have to communicate, but they also have to have boundaries.
When you truly care, you're caring, and your heart is just like with the other person.
Two people who have a great connection, who has around the same values or different values that they are respectful towards.
I would say they're comfortable with each other and they let each other know that.
They're also like supportive of each other and being like thoughtful, so.
They have to be understanding, you know, like ask questions, but definitely try to see the other person as a person and not just like an instrument to use.
Treats them with respect. I feel like that's like the #1 trait that you should have in a relationship.
I would want to know when they thought about me and stuff.
Feels safe to talk to me and also like wants to know about my day and cares about how I'm feeling and that like we're laughing together, but also like we can be very serious together.
I think my parents have a healthy relationship, even though they sometimes get mad at each other and get things out of their systems. They're still like supportive and they still compromise and do a lot of things for each other.
My brother and his girlfriend are a very good relationship because they spend time with each other and value each other very much.
Could I say mine?
Of course, yeah.
Well, my boyfriend treats me super well and I am so appreciative and grateful.
How long have y'all been together?
10 months. Yeah.
We're approaching that year mark.
I know, it's crazy. Thank you.
So I think that is a great YouTube resource as well, in case we're ever wondering what Generation Z sort of looks like these days. And I want to say too that a lot of those answers were sort of the answers that, you know, we would have, the answers of having respect, having values. And if they aren't the same values, to respect that there aren't the same values, to have boundaries, to have consent, all of those things. And I think that's something that's so interesting about Generation Z is that we are teaching children younger and younger how to respect themselves and each other. And I think that the age of consent, the age of learning about each other, the age of learning how to respect one another outside of a relationship context is truly important. So I just thought that was really interesting. And also know that, you know, with that comes a lot of different areas where people will find those relationships. A lot of the time people, Generation Z will find their friends and their relationships at school, but there are other places that they can find it as well. So we're going to be touching upon online dating during this time. And some of those statistics are a little scary, but we're going to be talking about that. Also, social media. What I do want to say is that they did change their marketing strategies because of Gen Z. And what I sort of want to say too is that this magazine specifically that I found really interesting, I'm going to link that in the description below once this is done. But really what I want to point out is just one thing in particular. And it says, according to Mediacom, over half of Gen Z consumers consider how trustworthy a brand is before engaging with it. And brands who depict transparency or an organic looking content deliver on this promise of trustworthiness in their young consumers' eyes. Now, what does this mean for relationships? And why did I put that in there in the first place? What I sort of want to know, and what I sort of was curious about was how authentic do brands have to be, and how does that translate over into relationships? And we're going to sort of see the correlation very quickly, I believe in the next slide, or at least in the next couple of slides, where we're going to be talking about how trustworthiness, authenticity, understanding a brand's values does translate into relationships, and that we sort of see that trend going on there. I also want to say that if you are curious about Generation Z, and I did a presentation last week that was about Generation Z primed for addiction, and we sort of talked about how the generation that is coming up are really primed for a lot of different things. And it sort of talks about how we can combat those things to make sure that they are living their best lives, that they are flourishing in the best way possible. but also to say that most of the time the kids are all right. They know what they're doing. They may be young, but they have a lot of values that they hold. They have a lot of things they want to accomplish. There are so many parts of society that they want to fix, and I think that in its own right, that is something that we should be thankful for, that they want to be so active in the community, that they want to be so active in the justice of this world. So that is something to keep in mind as we move forward. One more. So trends on dating. What I sort of want to talk about here is that online dating is interesting. Online dating is scary. Online dating is stressful. Online dating is a lot of things. And I'm sure that many people watching this can sort of relate, at least on some levels, when it comes to that, right? So I sort of want to say, why talk about it? Because a lot of these apps require someone to be over 18 in order to engage in this process, in order to engage in these platforms. But it doesn't mean that they are 18 when they make these profiles. They are 18 when they're interacting with this dating app. So I just want to look at this one thing here that I thought was interesting. It says think with Google, and Google actually looks at some of the trends and the consumer insights of Generation Z, which I found exciting and interesting. Now here it says 21% of Gen Zers say a texting conversation can count as a date. 51% of those between 18 and 24 say video and virtual dating are important. 65% of 18 to 24-year-olds say that dating websites and apps allow them to date someone outside of where they live. That could be true. 18 to 24-year-olds, 64 of 18 to 24-year-olds say that dating websites and apps allow them to be more diverse in who they date, which can also ring true. 41% of 18 to 24-year-olds learn about dating apps through online video sites, over 57% more than 25 to 34-year-olds. Now, let's sort of look at that for a second. And I wanted to end on this because what I want to say really here is that the way that Gen Z is getting their information is through social media. The way that Gen Z is getting a lot of their sort of changing ways is through social media. So when we're looking at the way that they interact with it, then that is something that to keep in mind. That is something to realize that, you know, people who want to know people who want to engage in the process, people who want to start dating, those people are finding ways to do it because social media makes it so easy. And I will have this in the description below. If you have any questions or concerns about it, you can obviously put that in the chat. But that is something that we're going through and we're going to be talking about a little bit more. So I sort of want to say also, what are some of the dangers of online dating? We know that there are dangers here. We know that there are horror stories and there will be brief mentions of violence. So I just want to make that clear. But I actually found this site called backgroundchecks.org. And what it essentially does is it sifts through a lot of the crime rates that are happening in certain areas and whether or not people on these dating websites are linked to any crimes in their area or linked to any past history. So really running these background checks is truly important. And what is great about a lot of dating apps, and what I do want to say that is good about them, is that you have to verify that you are that person. You have to take a picture of your driver's license. You have to prove that you are that person, but that doesn't always mean that it happens that way. And I do want to say also that when we're looking at dating apps here, there are so many different sites that you can find and so many different sites that lead to other people, that lead to other places. And I know for a fact that there are online dating sites that don't necessarily have a restriction on the location, meaning that you can find someone in Paris if you're in Trenton, New Jersey. And that is something that is scary, but also kind of exciting that you're meeting new people. And we're sort of going to leave it at that, right? So I do want to say too, though, that there are some apps that I find a little bit on the harder to sift through side, but also more potential for being catfished and things like that would be International Cupid, Army Cupid, BBW Cupid, anything that ends in Cupid. You are more likely to get catfish because there is actually a particular site, like a mother site that holds all and hosts all of these other dating websites. So I'm going to put more of that information in the description below, just because there is just a lot of statistics on it and it sort of takes away from the subject matter that we have, but it is a really interesting side note. So if you're looking for more information on that, I will still provide it for you. So I'm going to be talking about the backgroundchecks.org, and I wanted to look at this together because I wanted to really understand, okay, if things are safe, if things are dangerous, let's understand why, let's understand what's going on, what is the trend here. And we're sort of going to look through, and to be honest, some of it was surprising. And I'm sort of going to read through some of this just because I want us to understand where we're coming from here. And this was done in 2019. So they're really relevant numbers, only 2 years old, right? So it says 39% of heterosexual American couples met through online dating in 2019, according to Stanford University. This is up from 22% in 2009. So in 10 years, there was a 22% uppage, a 22% higher rate in how people found each other. So I thought that was really interesting. And here I also want to read, it says, while many people find relationship through today's tech, it's not always a pleasant experience. In fact, online dating can be downright dangerous, and we kind of do know this. Not everyone is only looking for love. Some people use the sites to look for victims, and the research shows sort of some of these, right? 10% of sex offenders use dating sites, so that is something to keep in mind. 1 in 10 users on free dating apps are scammers, so they could say, you could get really close to someone, catfish them in some capacity, and then say, oh, I'm running low on cash, can you send me some money? And then they get your bank account numbers like that, and then you sort of go through that whole debt process, which is not fun at all. And also sexual assaults linked to online dating platforms have grown, and this is a disturbing number, 6-fold in the past 5 years. And this is something to keep in mind too, that when people are online dating, when they're looking through this, there may be a lot of excitement when it comes to this sort of thing. And we never want to talk about the victim being blamed for these actions. But when there's online dating, there is definitely a level of caution that a lot of people must take, because you really are truly meeting strangers that you can't even see in person. So that is something that is scary, but it is a true process. And I sort of want to look at this too, where Alaska, for some reason, I just found this interesting, is the most dangerous site for online dating. Each state was given a danger score, and Alaska scores 12 times higher than the safest state on the list. And they talk about sort of the factors in which that people and sort of states and places are the reason why they are so dangerous. And it says here, why is Alaska so dangerous? And the rates of romance fraud, there were 85% reported cases of romance fraud in 2018, according to the FBI, and that correlates with the highest number of victims per capita in the US. In addition, Alaskans lost an estimated $1 million to online dating scams. So that's a pretty dangerous number to roll with, right? And Vermont is the safest for online dating, which I found interesting. So we're looking here at the top 5 most dangerous states for online dating: Alaska, Nevada, Colorado, Florida. Alaska, Nevada, California, Florida, and Colorado. And the top 5 safest, New Jersey is not on this list, but I will tell you where it is: Vermont, West Virginia, Montana, New Hampshire, and Maine. I don't know why that's so interesting, but a lot of them have mountains. Maybe that has something to do with it. But New Jersey is rated number 17, which means that we're in the upper third of what is considered the most dangerous. That doesn't mean that we are the most dangerous. There are definitely some variance in it. And the more you move down the list, the more interesting things can sort of become as you're looking through the data. But also understand that, New Jersey, just because it's not number 1, does not mean it can't be dangerous for people that are navigating the internet and online dating for the first time. And here's a visual for the most dangerous states for online dating. And once again, oh, sorry, I said 17, I'm at 18. New Jersey is number 18. So 19 states are considered dangerous. That includes New Jersey. 30 states are considered safe. That does not include New Jersey. And the safest states are in the eastern US. So we're talking about over here. All right, we're going to be moving on, and we're going to be moving forward. Once again, if you have any questions about some of these data, some of this interesting material, you can put that in the chat, or I will provide the resources later on. So I also want to say that social media can be a dating app too. Yes, Yes, it can. And what I find interesting, and I just want to tag this really quickly, is that TikTok, you can find any sort of hashtag on TikTok. You can find a lot of different areas of expertise on TikTok, a lot of different places that are really educational. But seriously, some people just go on and they're just being like, hey, I'm single, I'm enjoying my life, or hey, I'm single, I'm looking for someone. So there are enough views on this hashtag for us to look at and realize that people are using it to possibly get dates or to possibly date in some capacity. And it is at 25.4 billion views, meaning that people who have used this hashtag have had these videos viewed 25.4 billion times, which I find interesting, but also, something to keep in mind, something to watch for. And as we know, TikTok is the Gen Z app. It's the one where TikTok has the most Gen Z population out of any other social media app. And it is about 40% to 45% of users are from Gen Z. Now, the other thing that I want to notice is that there are quite a few different areas here, and I'm not going to click on this link because there's only one quote that I really wanted to get out of it, and it is by Amelia Sampson. She is a Gen Zer who was interviewed for this presentation, or for this article, and she said TikTok is kind of like getting into someone else's world without being in the same room as them, and this is sort of the environment. This is sort of the interesting part of TikTok, where you actually sort of find that people are using this app to find people that they like, because on TikTok, people are so candid, people are so interesting. And what it says here, and what is quoted here also, is along with the skateboarding dogs and lip syncs, people talk about gender, body positivity, mental health, physical health, neurodiversity. And it's not abstract. It's real humans talking about what it feels like to be depressed, to have ADHD, to be the target of microaggressions, about how they relate to their friends, families, and pets, about how they moved across the country, about the books they like, and how they finally got the hang of winged eyeliner. Now, why is this interesting? It's because this app in general, we have Instagram, and I think that Instagram is great for a lot of things, but really it only highlights the best part of someone's life. With TikTok, people can just put a camera up to their face whenever they want and show what they want, absolutely, but people feel very candid on this app. It's a very authentic, honest app when people are putting themselves out there. Much like YouTube, you can find a lot of places where people are very genuine, where people really want to help, where there's a lot of discourse on certain things. Now, this is not that much different from TikTok. It is still a video platform. People are still able to put what they want out there, but there's this level of authenticity on TikTok that Gen Zers really gravitate towards. And this can be for a lot of reasons, but one could be actually something called duetting. For anyone that doesn't know duetting, it can actually be a way to sort of say like, hey, I'm interested. And it can really mean saying like, oh, I'm so single, would anybody date me? And then you duet that person, meaning that you record yourself responding to that person, and you sort of create a relationship that way. You create a bond, you create a sort of a social cue when it comes to that sort of thing. Also, follow count can be something too, where if you find that you're really liking someone, you can just follow them and follow their content and see what they're about, and sort of learn about them through that, learn about their habits, their interests, their way of life, their philosophies. All of those sorts of things can be through following them. And also, there is something on TikTok called the For You page, meaning that it is something that is an algorithm. It is formulated through the likes and dislikes that you have on the platform. And so whatever TikTok thinks you're going to like, it sort of just presents those videos, and you just scroll through the videos as you move through the app. So that is a way that social media can definitely be used as a dating app. And also, we know that people have met through Facebook, people have met through Instagram. People say, oh, this person looks really cute, or this person looks interesting. Let me follow them. Let me know more about them. Let me DM them. Let me message them. And so it's not as if social media as a dating app is a new concept, but it is definitely something that has revolutionized the way that Gen Z looks at dating. And also the way that we look at this too is that because, and we're going to be moving on to this next slide because it sort of bleeds into it, breakups and dating apps, there's definitely a correlation here, that due to a lot of different ways that Gen Z is interested in dating, they also have somewhat of a cultural shift in a dating phobia. And I want to read this article on the westerngazette.ca because it is interesting, but they do put it in better words than I could. And they say, due to technology and how easy it is to connect with people, sometimes we take individual relationships for granted. We use technology to maintain surface level bond, but we don't put in the effort to build long lasting relationships, making commitment difficult. Now, what this sort of sentence and what this excerpt means is that when we're looking through dating, when we're looking through the apps, when we're looking through a lot of what this looks like and a lot of what could be interesting about apps and things like that and dating in general, is that Generation Z, although they do look for authenticity, they sort of have a thing about it where they are given so many options. And what I mean by this is that when they're given so many options, they sort of have this thing where they're like, if I have so many options, why am I settling on one person? If I have so many options, why am I only looking at this one person? And that can be really frustrating for a lot of reasons, for a lot of different people. But really, what we're talking about here is that Generation Z loves the idea of variety, loves the idea of capacity, loves the idea of instant gratification, because it's only what they know. It's just something that they've always been a part of. It's something that they've always been interested in. Now, and it's the way that they grew up. So it's not necessarily to the fault of their own. And to understand Gen Z a little bit better, remember I did do a presentation on them, just so you're interested in learning more about that. That is definitely something you can look at into. I also want to say too, that because of this excerpt, it also has this level of surface level relationships that people are talking about, especially when it comes to dating. And it's that I know this person, I know a lot about this person, and then I sort of want to move on. So it's as if when you have dating and when you have these apps, because you are putting so much of yourself out there, it's sort of saying, well, I already know so much about this person and I don't like everything that I see. And it's sort of saying, well, are you really giving this person a chance? Are you really giving them the due diligence that they deserve if you want to be in a relationship with them, given your understanding of the world, given your understanding of that person, and given your understanding of what your values are and what their values are? So I thought that was really interesting. And once again, there was an excerpt here that I found really interesting as well. And for such students, committing themselves to a single person is more daunting now than ever. As we spend hours scrolling, swiping, and liking, our eyes are open to the infinite amount of options that could potentially be ours. In swiping right, you may find someone more attuned to your niche personality, someone better. And this is something a little bit scary to think about. Everyone is replaceable. And so, in other words, the fear of restricting yourself to one person, to one option, puts the average Gen Z person in an anxious frenzy. We don't want to settle. And I think that is something really interesting too, that as we're seeing this trend, as we're seeing Gen Z not wanting to settle on people, it's also that Gen Z doesn't want to settle, and they don't want to settle because they're afraid that they're not with the right person, which in its own right can be sweet and interesting and all of those sorts of things. But also understand that that does mean that you're not taking bets on people, that you're not committing to one person. And so that can mean that you can get through a lot of relationships very quickly. Now, so there are things on dating apps that we also need to know, that yes, teens aren't necessarily supposed to be being on Tinder or Bumble or Hinge or things like that, but that doesn't mean they don't try. That doesn't mean there aren't apps for them. And I'm going to click on this just so we can look through it, because I find it interesting, but also that it is something for people to know. This is by Dayton Daily News, and there are a lot of different apps for teens that are technically dating apps, but they are they're marketed like friendship apps, but really they are meant to be dating apps. So there's My LOL, there's Scout, there's Yubo, there's Hot or Not. Technically you have to be 18 or older, but non-registered users have limited access. So even if you aren't 18 or older, you can still join. It can be obscene, it can be pornographic. And it can offend a lot of people because of the content of Hot or Not. And I don't know if anyone has ever done Hot or Not before, but it can lead to a lot of different confidence boosters or confidence deflation, depending on how the public reacts to your pictures. Also, Meet Me is another app as well. You have to be 18 or older, but you just need a credit card to use it. So you can technically use your parents' credit card for that as well. So there are a lot of different apps here. And what is really interesting and what I want to sort of preface, especially with my LOL, is that almost all of these dating apps are meant for people to communicate with each other, but there is something that happens here. And it is so that when people are of developmentally different ages, then this can be a concern because the users must be at least 13, but they cannot be older than 19. And I don't know about anyone else, but a relationship between a 13 and a 19-year-old, definitely a huge age gap developmentally, and something that should not happen in the first place because of the consent, the aspects of a lot of different areas there. And I just want to say that, this is a reality that does happen. This is something that, it can be dangerous for a lot of different reasons. It can lead to a lot of different areas of sexual violence, of domestic violence, of dating violence, and things like that. So just keeping aware of what's on your teen's phone, keeping aware of what the youth in our lives are going through and the apps on their phone in general, that is something that I think that could really help, especially with our due diligence. Now, there are a lot of many dangers when it comes to this, and we sort of already discussed some of them, but also knowing that why would teens want to have it, right? And I think that there are a lot of different ways that we can look at it, that some people just want to feel connected. Some people just want to feel like they are able to have control over parts of their lives, which is why they would want to meet people. So let's understand that too, that if they're reaching out on these dating apps, they're reaching out on these dating apps and they are doing something because they want to feel connected to somebody else. And if they are doing that, then there are a lot of different ways that they can cope with that, which we will be talking about later on in this presentation. I also want to say that if we're talking about dangers of dating in general, just about sexual violence and substance use disorders, sexual violence and domestic violence, I do have a presentation on that. I will link that in the description below as well, because it does have a lot of good information on dating violence. And we'll be moving forward. So we're sort of talking about a lot of the harsh things that are existing due to due to dating violence and due to all of these dating apps that are happening, and people are engaging with when they're younger. But also understand that a lot of the time, the way that children interact, and especially in the first video that I had shown, was that children interact based on the behaviors that are modeled around them. And I have quite a few different resources here, which will also be in the description below. But there are many different ways that you can model healthy relationships for your children. And some of them really do include just being there for your child, being there and fighting healthily around your child. And children look towards examples to know what to do, whether it's for substances or otherwise. And modeling behavior for children is the best way for them to lead healthier lives, because they are socialized by their friends, by their peers, but they are socialized by you too. And you are one of the biggest influences that they have, especially if you're around them all the time. And no matter their age, children are observant. Even when you don't think they're paying attention to us, they are looking, they are searching for what to do, they are searching for how to be better, they are searching for how things inform how they act, how they think, how they interact with the world around them. And I think this is why people worry so much as parents and around people who are trying to be role models for their children. So this is a great resource. It's called New Direction Family Law. And this actually is for people going through divorces, and how to act around your children while you're going through a divorce. So model healthy relationships, communication, teach them kindness, honesty, self-respect, teach them about breaking up and how it's not the worst thing in the world, but make sure that there is little drama involved in how you are interacting with your spouse, just so that the child can be towards like the best the child can know what breaking up looks like and not saying that this is the end of the world. This is something that's going to hurt me forever. Also know that self-respect is a really big one too, because if you are, and it says here, if you're in an emotionally or physically abusive relationship, your children learn quickly how relationships are supposed to work. Meaning that if someone hurts you in front of them, if someone physically hurts you in front of them, if someone is violent to you in front of the children that you are around, then it shows how much you can take. It shows how much you are willing to take. And obviously, we're not going to blame people who can't leave situations, but what we are saying here is that the self-respect that you are teaching your children is that what you can take is what they can take too. So even if you're in a place where you're at a grocery store and someone is yelling at you, if you're in a public area and people are disrespecting you, how much are you going to take in front of your children? And that teaches them how much they can take too. So that's obviously modeling a lot of that. Being honest with your children is truly important. Being honest with each other is great. And kindness, teaching them kindness, especially in a time where it is so stressful, especially in a time where things can really hurt them. So when we're teaching them kindness, and if we treat others with respect and kindness without meanness or judgment, we are able to sort of portray a lot of those values into our children that we're around. So I thought it was a really great resource because not everyone is going through divorce, obviously, but especially if your family may be going through a hard time, it is a great resource for you to know those resources. So I also have another article here, and what really they're talking about here is that when we are looking for parenting habits that your kids are learning from you, here are some of the habits that they are learning. And they have a list here, and it is acceptance, friendship, affection, gratitude, sharing responsibilities, and conflict resolution. So those are all sorts of things that they're learning while they are seeing your relationships with your loved ones. These are the things that they are looking at. These are the things that they are looking to model after. So these are all important concepts. Now, and all of these are taught in, just to let you know that all of these are taught in our life skills courses that we offer, but more so when we are looking at this, we want to help them have their best experiences possible with the best tools available to them. So if you are wondering about our life skills programs or Too Good for Drug programs, we have those on our website in case you are wondering about that. Now, sort of what's the root of the issue here? How can we validate and also model behavior at the same time? The best way to make children and adolescents feel like what they are saying is something that matters. And that is how you model behavior when you are in front of them, but also to them to let them know what they are worth. And this person in particular, she actually did a TED Talk called I'm 17, and she's literally 17 years old. And she basically says, what's the qualification for wanting to do a TED Talk? You just have to have an idea. You don't necessarily have to have any qualification other than that. As long as you sign up, people will show up. So she sort of talks about how, especially children, may not have the same weight for their ideas versus adults, because children may not have many as learned experiences, but she does explain it very eloquently in this video. So I do want to play it.
Thoughts, and let me tell you, we got stuff done, but things would change the second I'd leave the building. I'd try talking to an adult about something I'd be working on, my research or a project, and they would ask me, what do you know? And all teens are asked this. What do you know? How could you know this? You're only a teenager. We are asked this when we talk about politics or education, even with what we want to do with our lives, because we are too young to understand. Just because we have vertical driver's licenses and you all have horizontal driver's licenses, apparently we don't know what love is. We can't know what we shouldn't believe. We don't get to deserve, or we don't get to talk about education or politics, because we don't live in the quote unquote real world. We actually do not get to speak for ourselves. Now, at this point, you may have noticed that I'm not using slides. Part of the reason why is that I don't really need them, but to be honest with you, the real reason why is that this is a really unique chance for a student like me to have your attention, so I'm going to strategically direct 100% of it to myself. This problem is bigger than it sounds. From my contrasting experiences at One Stone, and with the help of the amazing teachers I've had, I've become fully aware of the constant belittling that occurs to student voices. This problem is big. Look at our education system. As students, we have no say in what we learn or how we learn it, yet we're expected to absorb it all, take it all in, and be able to run the world someday. We're expected to raise our hands to use the restroom, then 3 months later, be ready to go to college or have a full-time job, support ourselves, and live on our own. It's not logical. My mom is an elementary school teacher, and I always hear her and her colleagues talking about how kindergartners, when asked a question, are thrilled to be raising their hands, all of them. Yet, as you increase the grade level, fewer and fewer hands are raised each year. Now, in my senior classes in high school, it's common that when asked a question, no one raises their hand, and the teacher has to call out names from a roster. I think this is because A, students aren't confident in their own answers, B, students have been made fun of for answering too many questions correctly, or C, their students aren't listening. Maybe they're texting in their lap, or most likely just extremely disinterested. And these are all three really big problems. Students have lost sight of their education's value and have therefore stopped learning. Because we're told, you don't get it, you're 17, you don't deserve to have the control over what you learn. And this statement and this mindset are toxic.
Okay. So I think that she, one, is very passionate about what she wants to portray. So I think that that is something to value, that if there is passion there, if there is passion, especially from someone who is younger, that passion should be fostered, that passion should be acknowledged, that passion should be given avenues to be expressed in other ways. So that is one thing. Also to understand that when there are a lot of discussions about saying that, well, you're a child, you don't know what love is. You're a child, you don't know what relationships are. You're a child, you don't know what the real world is like. And to be honest, I always find issue with that, because the real world is the world of whatever that person is in. That is their realness. That is the real world for them. And yes, they don't have jobs sometimes. They don't have taxes. They don't have mortgages. They don't have really stressful marriages and things like that. But to understand that they should be given the due diligence and the authenticity and the respect to be able to express themselves in a way that doesn't invalidate their existence. Now, also, understand that just because teenagers are teenagers does not mean that they are not able to have empathy, does not mean they are not able to feel, does not mean they are not able to come to their own conclusions. And we also want to empathize with a lot of their conclusions and realizations. And if we respect their choices on what they have decided to do, then we can foster that thinking that leads to better outcomes. That means that we are able to give them a practice in what it's like to have a mind that is thoughtful and interesting and looking at things in a very analytical way so that they can make the world a better place one day. And I don't think that any age at any point doesn't necessarily not have value, that everyone's ideas, everyone's input is something of value, is something that we can look towards. And it doesn't necessarily just translate to relationships and what they think they deserve. It's translating to every part of the way that teenagers interact with their environment. Now, it is also showing that, children, because of the way that we may invalidate their ideas, because of the way that we may invalidate their existence, their authenticity, we may also lead to them having a lot of different ways that they need to cope. And we're going to be talking about that. Now, coping skills. We sort of want to help them breathing through the anxiety, but also understand that because we may not be validating everything that they may be looking towards relationships to validate that process. That for some people, especially the younger people who are looking for relationships, because they look at relationships as a way that is holistic. Relationships are something that is the bread and butter of feeling good about yourself. It's the thing that makes someone so much more worthy. It's saying, I am worthy of love because someone else loves me, not saying I am worthy of love because I choose to be worthy of that. So that is something that we need to keep in mind, that if we don't validate their experiences, if we don't validate their input, then we may be looking towards, and we may be looking at children who are looking for other places to get that validation, which in holistically includes relationships. Now, understand that their friend circles, know who the right friends are. When they're looking for coping skills, friends can definitely be a part of that coping skill. I know for a fact my friends are definitely a part of how I can cope with things that are hard in my life, because they just help me with perspective, they help me laugh, they help me cry, all those sorts of things, right? So understand also that with these coping skills, especially with something that is a friend, it is a chosen family, which means they have full autonomy over those interactions. They have full autonomy over what they want that relationship or that friendship to look like. Now, also understand that friends, there must be boundaries as well. There must be respect. There must be lived experiences that they have together in order to understand each other. But in reality, friends can be a great coping skill when it is used in a great and healthy way. Now, also know that coping skills can come with breakups that may seem catastrophic, because especially when people are looking towards someone who was their whole world, breaking up can be really difficult because it feels as if their whole world is crashing down. But helping through breakups by reaching out to the right people and being in the right places can definitely be a place to start. Conflict resolution, especially when people are in relationships, this can also be a coping skill, because of the way that people understand it and people interact with that anger or with that event itself. And I have a thing here that says 5 ways to teach conflict resolution for social and emotional teaching for children, and it is an education website. And some of the lists that they have here is role playing, building listening skills, de-escalation, reading and writing, and understanding that there will be teachable moments, especially when it comes to relationships, because we all have lived through that before. We all have lived through having a relationship that is our whole world. We've all had our big first breakup, right? So when we use that to relate to them in a way that helps them, if we use that to relate to them in a way that teaches them in those teachable moments, then it helps them get through the hard stuff. It helps them get through the stuff that they thought that they couldn't. And I think that's a really important part for us to look through as well. And coping skills in general, there are so many different types of coping skills, but this is just for breaking up in general. This can be for a lot of different things. You can obviously transfer these skills in many different ways. And I'm going to be closing out my presentation with a quote that I think sort of wraps up the sentiment of this presentation and sort of looks at it through a different lens here, where it says there's always another level up, there's always another ascension, more grace, more light, more generosity, more compassion, more to shed, more to grow. And this is by Elizabeth Gilbert. And what I want to sort of reiterate when we're looking at this is that relationships and dating and romance and interacting with the world on a level that may not always be mature is part of leveling up. It is part of the lived experience. It is part of saying, I now have these tools due to my lived experiences, and I will use them in my next experience. I am more equipped. I am more generous. I am more kind. I am more compassionate. I am all of these positive and great things because of my experiences. And I think that is something that we can really look at for children and teenagers, especially when they are going through a relationship that may be hard, when they are going through something that they may think is age appropriate, but may not necessarily be age appropriate, such as, online dating, or such as something that is much more serious, such as dating violence. Understand that we are giving them the tools to level up. We are giving them the tools to interact with their environment differently next time. That if we are to help them in one way, we can help them in a lot of ways. So relationships are definitely one part of it, and this quote can definitely relate to many different parts of their lives, but also understand that if there is one aspect of their life that doesn't really change, because everything else does change, it's our support. It's our words, it's our guidance, it's our generosity towards them, it's our kindness and compassion towards their lived experiences. So if we understand how to help them, if we understand and use our empathetic resources to get them through the hard stuff, then we'd be helping them have a better future. Now, thank you for your time. Thank you for anything that you may have to say about it. Once again, if you're looking for the resources, they will be in the description below, and this will be out the coming Monday. Next week, we actually will be talking about water quality and substance use disorders. How do they relate? I think that that will definitely be an interesting topic to talk about. So thank you again. Thank you for your time.